statistical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome, everybody, on in to the Saturday Night Network for another edition of our Monday Night Roundtable, here to cover the Ryan Gosling and Chris Stapleton episode of Saturday Night Live. My name is John from the SNN. Very happy to be here on this Monday and as a presentation of LateNighter.com. So thanks to our friends over there. And wow, we have a great panel for you tonight. I cannot wait to get into this episode. It's the episode that people can't stop talking about. So we are going to keep that conversation going tonight. So first, let me bring in Bill Kenney with an amazing sweatshirt on. Bill, how are you?
John, I'm doing great. As I was telling you pre-show, I have not seen any of the discourse about the show. I know there's a lot being talked about. What a fun show. Probably the most fun show we've had in a very long time. Some of it was stupid fun. Some of it was smart fun, but we'll get into all that. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be with Dr. Needleman as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Joining us as well first up is Kirstin Rajala, my Canadian friend. Kirstin, how are you?
I'm great. I had my SNL sweatshirt on and I got too hot, so that sucks for me. I'm glad you're representing Bill. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm extra excited because I'm here with that witch, Gary.
Well, my past has come back to haunt me.
Yeah, let's not spoil the fun anymore or ruin the surprise, because we are so blessed to be joined by a former SNL cast member on the podcast tonight. Saturday Night Live on Saturday said we need to bring in a star from Iowa, so we thought we should do the same. Gary Kroeger is here on the podcast tonight. Gary, how are you?
Well, I'm very well. So I'm Gary from Iowa. Do you all, Kirstin, are you tired of being called my friend from Canada all the time and not just?
No, we
Kirstin?
wear it proudly. We wear it proudly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I should call you Kirstin from Canada this evening?
Yeah, Kirstin from Canada. That's how I go. Yeah.
All right. Nice to meet you. And Bill, finally, nice to meet you. And John, good to see you again.
Great to see you, Gary. Excited to talk to you about the show. So thanks for joining us tonight. Very excited to get into another Canadian friend, Ryan Gosling, who hosted Saturday Night Live for the third time. It was been a few years since we saw him, and he came back and he was giggly and excited to be there. Felt like he fit right into the Saturday Night Live machine. So, Bill, for you, were you excited to see that Ryan Gosling was booked for Saturday Night Live for the third time as host?
I think I was pretty excited. His first episode was so long ago, but it was really one of the best episodes of that season, back in season 41. That was the first time we got Close Encounters. We got the Santa baby with Vanessa. And so there was a lot of really good stuff going on. The second one is entered into the Trump era. And the show is bogged down by all that nonsense. I don't think it was quite as good. But yeah, I mean, he's a fun host. He's always game for anything. And I don't remember him being quite so breakable. I half expected him to pull off the Ryan Gosling suit and be Jimmy Fallon underneath it. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and he had a good time. So I guess we all did too.
Kirstin, what are your memories of Ryan Gosling as a host, and were you excited to have him back for the third time? Obviously, he had a huge summer with Barbie, and him being Ken recently performing at the Oscars as well. So his name is everywhere right now. What are your thoughts?
Another one of Canada's greatest exports. Maple syrup goodness. I'm a huge fan of his. He's just so wonderful, and he's so beloved, and he brought his full Kenergy. I went and watched his previous two hosting episodes this weekend. If you go back and watch that 2015, he's just so sweet and a little nervous. And then by the second show, he's found some of that Kenergy, and he's realizing his place in Hollywood and that he's got it pretty good and people are getting him. By the way, he always broke. He laughs all the time. He sings in the monologue or he performs with a piano and he brings up, movie actresses that he's promoting with, but he always laughed. So I thought he laughed a lot in this one. When I went back, he's always a giggler, and somehow he gets away with it where I think Jimmy Fallon doesn't. Jimmy Fallon is almost, and I love him, but he's laughing because he really can't help it. Everything's silly. He seems like he's maybe stoned. Whereas Ryan, I don't know, how does he get away with it that we just love to see him laugh? Anyways, I'm here for it. I was very excited. And this is just just another step to his 5-timers, because we know he's going to get there pretty quickly.
I think the answer is likely overexposure, where we see Jimmy Fallon 5 times a week on television. So we got used to it. And then for years and years on Saturday Night Live, he would break. So I think people got a little tired of it. But if we saw Ryan Gosling break all the time, I think you'd feel the same way. But to me, I think Ryan Gosling is infectious. He has a personality that brights up a room. There's some magnetism about him, which is, definitely why he is so successful beyond just his talent. So, Gary, I tried not to read your thoughts on the show this week. I know you also participated in our friend Andy's Entertainment Weekly recap, but I did see, because we were Facebook friends, that you said that you have, is it a little bit of a man crush on Ryan Gosling? So,
well, I think I said in that article in Entertainment Weekly, if I threw out any more superlatives, he'd probably hire security, because I'm quite enamored with him. And then I thought, I don't need to apologize for that, because everyone is. He is on such a roll, but it's been a very carefully modulated role. He didn't just suddenly come on the scene. He has been building up to this place for years now. And I think Ryan Gosling now is writing the he can do no wrong. This year, capped off by the Oscars and singing the song, which was so perfect. And the way that he addressed the fact that some people were not nominated for Barbie that should have been, and yet he was, he said all the right things. So I think leading into this Saturday Night Live, yes, he does have a tendency to laugh. He enjoys himself. If you watch him on Graham Norton, he enjoys himself. He loves to tell a joke. But I think they decided, let's just take the training wheels off and just see where this thing goes. In past shows that he's hosted, I commented that he's funny because he doesn't try to be funny. He exists within the comedy, within the concept, and then he plays it so well that that's what makes him funny. I think that they said, look, we know you're going to do that, but just have a good time tonight. Have a really good time. And they did.
Yeah, and I think it works also because, playing the role of Ken in the Barbie movie, where, the gender, conversation was brought up a lot this last summer about how important of a movie it was, and the lessons that can be learned from the movie, even though it was like good, clean fun. There were some really poignant things that I think people took away from that movie. And I think that Ryan Gosling, being such a huge star, wanting to take the role about, gender dynamics and stuff like that, and how, people value a Ken versus a Barbie, I think really endeared him already. He was already endearing to people, but I think it endeared him even more to the general public at large, so much so that it's like, hey, can this guy do no wrong? And I think, Gary, when a host comes in that sort of has a long leash already, they have room to play on the SNL playground, unlike other hosts that maybe aren't as well known. Well,
and it isn't like he didn't know that The Fall Guy was coming out. So here is a big fun romp where it's everything that Ryan Gosling does well. I haven't seen the movie, but it's getting great reviews. And it's everything he does well. He plays a hero. He plays things physical. He plays things cerebral. He's funny. He can make you cry. Again, there's the man crush that you introduced me with. I mean, hey, absolutely. Bill, John, if you could right now at this point in your life go, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a Ryan Gosling suit, wouldn't you say yes?
Oh, hell yes.
Hell yes. I used to say, I'm a happily married man, but I've had here are my man crushes: Robert Redford, George Clooney, and now Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. Well, those are some great names.
Maybe Denzel Washington.
So I absolutely love it, Gary. So, I think it was a really good decision to bring back a Ryan Gosling now. Not only is he super, hot outside of the show, but also I've always vouched that I think the best time to bring back Saturday Night Live hosts is when they're at different stages of their lives. it's great to get a John Goodman and see him every year, and a John Mulaney and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But to me, the value in seeing a host a few years later, a little bit older, more experienced, know some of those tricks, I think really makes a difference in terms of watching all of their episodes. So for me, I think the space between the last time we saw him on the show, the exception being that he cameoed last week, but really since the last time he hosted, led to a really exciting and invigorated energy in the show. Bill, do you feel the same way when you see hosts that are, come back and they're further apart from their previous hosting gig?
Yeah, I think, well, there's two different trains of thought with that. As you said, with the Goodman, or back in the day with Timberlake, even Mulaney in previous years. But yeah, there is something, and it is the milestones to look at. It was strange to go back all the way 8 years ago to look at that first episode he was on, as Kirstin referenced. Like, he was a baby-faced kid who was just kind of feeling his way through. And it's fun to see somebody who's now a megastar come back, know where he made some of his bones, even if it was just for those couple of weeks back in the early 2010s, and be able to come back and do it in a different way. So yeah, that great point.
Kirstin, what about you? Were you excited to see Gosling more because we hadn't seen him host in a while?
Yeah, as a fan, yes. I was waiting for him to come back. I think we all knew it would happen sooner rather than later. It's funny, he was interviewed on Fallon, and Fallon said, like, are you less nervous? You've done it now. He's like, I'm actually more nervous. Like, now I know what to expect. Before I was like, who knows what's going to happen? He's like, now I know kind of the pressure and the grind and all of the work that goes into it, and I get more nervous about those things. But I think he's almost like the Timberlake of this era, where he's just such a reliable, dependable, multi-talented person, singing, dancing, acting, all of these things, and has that type of appeal where both men and women clearly are fans of his. He's really making theater kids look cool. I'm sure they're all excited. When you look back at that early footage of him doing the Running Man in lame pants when he's 10 years old and stuff, like, that could have turned out very differently for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gary, I think there's a couple of interesting comparisons. When I look at the list of 3-time hosts in SNL history, a couple that you were there for, Howard Hessman is a host that I believe hosted twice in the same season while you were there.
Yeah.
And then Lily Tomlin was somebody who we hadn't seen since the original era, but came back while you were there as well. So from your experience being on the show, a host coming in who maybe is there more frequently versus somebody who you hadn't seen in a while, how does that play in the building from your experience?
Well, that's interesting. Excuse me. In general, in my experience, bringing hosts back quickly did not work, because take Howard Hessman, for example. That was a killer show. We were all surprised. He came from the committee, so he knew how to improvise. He learned his lines. He was a tremendous host and really surprised us with how many great sketches there were. So, of course, let's rebook him. Well, forgive me for saying this, but the writers tended to sort of recycle what worked. And as a result, the second show was very stale. If you can jumpstart the engine to where it's a fresh experience each time, great. But if you bring a host back because they were so good last time, there's a tendency to reprise some things that maybe shouldn't have been. Now, that being said, I think the alien abduction reprisal was the greatest thing ever.
Oh, okay. Tell us why.
Because the simple joke where he says, and he plays it so straight, I think I was wearing these same clothes. I laughed so hard, I didn't even need another laugh for the night. It was so perfect because they called attention to the fact that, hey, we're doing the same thing again. And he just sat in the pocket and did it so straight that it was brilliant.
Yeah, so let's maybe talk about that sketch that opened up the night where we got our 8th edition of Close Encounters, which was really interesting because that sketch pretty much had finality to it. The last time that it was aired, it was Kate McKinnon's last episode. She goes off with the aliens, and we think we're never going to see this sketch again. But they decided to bring it back, and I thought this was a fascinating decision. A little bit of a debate that I had over the weekend was, are they getting away with this because continuity in SNL sketches doesn't matter anymore? Is it, is SNL so, delivered in a different way where it's now online for people to watch in 3 to 4 minute chunks, that, character development isn't important. Watching the show every week from week to week isn't a thing. I mean, Gary, you were on the show in the 80s where I felt like there was so much continuity between what happened in the cold opens, or even just some sketches where you got to, meet different recurring characters and see how they grew in their storylines. I just thought it was a fascinating choice that they basically retconned her going up with the aliens. And now it's like, okay, let's just pretend this never happened and recycle the whole thing over again. But it seemed to work for you.
It definitely worked for me. And it worked for me because, look, Kate McKinnon was in the same position. Her legs were in the same position. And everything that I identified with, having enjoyed the sketch when it first aired, was a little bit like going to see Paul McCartney. It's like, all right, he's doing Hey Jude, just the way I want him to.
Yeah, play the hits.
Yeah, it was a hit. And so that's what I wanted. But you're right. It is a show now that they have their podcasts like this. We didn't have anybody talking about the show. There was no behind the scenes. There really was no press week to week. There was no YouTube. You couldn't watch the show the next day. You had to wait for a rerun. So I think we did tend to be a little more, as you say, continuity. A show was one show rather than pieces, sketches.
I'm curious, do you, Gary, think that's good for the... Do you think that's good for the show? Like that they have that now where basically we don't need the continuity, or is it,
well, I think it's necessary for the show. I don't think there's a choice because I don't watch Fallon anymore until the next day. Everything now is, I take it when I want it. I take it with my coffee the way I want it. And SNL inevitably had to go there. I skip the musical guest if I don't like the musical guest now.
Mm-hmm.
I like Chris Stapleton though.
He was fantastic on Saturday. I gotta say.
God. Got another man crush. Write it down. There we go.
Yeah, Bill, as somebody like you who was literally seen every show live for almost 40 years, I would love to know how you feel like something like this happens where we open up our show and lose the continuity of a sketch that maybe you had seen as it's airing. Does this bother you at all, or you're comfortable and knew that this is an exciting moment given that Ryan Gosling was in the building?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. As we've talked about quite a bit on this here program, that, that's why we don't have these recurring characters as much anymore. Because if you go on YouTube and watch 17 Lisa from Temecula's, you're going to turn on Ego, you're going to turn on the show. So I think this fits in that box as well. I'm okay with this because I think it was such a big moment to get Kate back to the show. There were people who wanted her to do this in her cold open in December and bring this back. So, yeah, I don't think it's like watching Lost, SNL retconning something like this. I'm okay with that. So, and it was a lot of fun to see back, even though we were missing two stalwarts in 80 and Cecily. I think Sarah and Bowen filled in admirably.
Yeah, they did.
Yep.
But isn't there some sort of in between? Like, can't we get, maybe a line from somebody saying like how she was dropped out of the spaceship and fell down to Earth at some point? Like, so at least we get the storyline. Kirstin, am I crazy?
To me, she's linked that journey for her of going up in the spaceship. That is linked to her departure on the show, Kate McKinnon's. So to me, it felt too symbolic with her leaving the show that now that she's back, there was no cognitive dissonance for me. I was like, oh yeah, there she is. Because I was so linked to her very personal, emotional tears and goodbye as she left. So to me, that was Kate leaving the show and not Colleen Rafferty. So I didn't mind at all. And it's so good. If it hadn't delivered, I think we'd be having a different conversation. But because it was so good, we're like, welcome back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think that for me, what I look for from these sketches that have always worked, obviously the euphemisms that she uses,
my juicer and my deucer,
that stuff, and then of course we're gonna get this one as well.
My ween hole and my bean hole.
So we're always finding new ones to go. But I felt like what was creative and different about this sketch, because besides all the continuity angle, I think this sketch really worked because they did something a little different, which was the whole getting Ryan Gosling to stand up, her going under his pants or in between him, and I think this line really killed me.
He tried to wear it like a hat. He had it draped over his nose like a Viking helmet.
and him calling it his troll nose
Well,
and all that stuff. So there was stuff there, Gary.
You have to remember, the show is played for the audience that's there at 8H. I mean, obviously, we're the 12 million people that keep the show on the air, but the laughs come from 8H. And they know when they do it this way and recall these particular things, it is like going to see Paul McCartney, and you applaud and are so excited by getting what you wanted. It's like in the old days. Now, this was before me, and this is what Jim Downey once told me. He said, we did a bee sketch. The first time the bees came on with John Belushi, it bombed. So normally you'd say, well, we're not going to do any more bee sketches. But Lorne Michaels said, we're going to keep doing this sketch until people applaud because it's a bee sketch. So they kept doing it. And lo and behold, the bee sketch that died came on for the third time. And people in the audience are going, it's a bee sketch. We're here for a bee sketch. And then it's now one of the legendary concepts.
Yeah, and you could do a whole podcast on that, because really with the bees, it's, them, fighting the network and being, counterculture and all of that stuff. Whereas now SNL is the culture, and it's interesting how they'll continue to push down on these things. But I think that this was a really funny addition. I was thrilled that they brought Kate McKinnon back in. And she didn't have to be in anything else that night. Like, she shows up, she does her thing. It's like,
went to the party afterwards, great gig.
Perfect. Like, gives us the dunk we were all looking for, and then hangs out backstage. So I thought this was a really great moment of the night. Gary, I would love to know from you if there was another sketch that you really want us to talk about.
Yeah. And I know everybody wants to talk about it. It's Beavis and Butthead. You got to talk about Beavis and Butthead. Well, because it broke the third wall. And generally speaking, I don't like breaking the third wall. It's infectious. We know we call it a Harvey Kormanism. It's a Carol Burnett thing. And when Tim Conway would make Harvey Korman laugh, it made the audience laugh, and then it's infectious, and it does leak into the 20 million people watching. It's a device. And Jimmy Fallon, and I'm not knocking Jimmy Fallon. I think he's great. But I think he started to use the device after a while, because it so ingratiates you and creates laughs in the audience. Now, I'm told that Lorne hates breaking that wall and breaking the sketch. I personally approached everything as an actor. I think Don Rickles made me laugh. But other than that, I prided myself in the fact that I stayed in the sketch. So I was really surprised when Heidi Gardner, who I think of in the same way as total commitment, lives behind her eyes. She's so into the sketch. But when she turned and she saw, I guess it was Butthead that first made her really lose it, right?
Yeah, so, I think Beavis got her a little bit, but it's really Mikey Day as Butthead.
And that was a sincere laugh. There's no getting around it. And then it just becomes, it's hard to say, but you're laughing with them, and it's so enjoyable because they were surprised. I guess, because I'm trying to figure this out, I'll bet you, to keep it real, they kept the prosthetics away from them until air. That's my guess, because there's no way to be that genuine unless you are really surprised. And if that were the case, and she had done the sketch in rehearsal, and then she turns around to see that, that's what everybody related to. Like, oh my God, it's Butthead.
Well, so let me answer the question. So my understanding, because we do have friends of ours who attend dress rehearsal, he was in prosthetics in dress, and she did break, but it was not to the same extent. So like the extra gums, the bug eyes that he was making, like it was really taken to like exponential degrees. Mm-hmm. And that was really what broke her. And I think Vulture wrote a great article today. They got to interview Heidi, and they asked her about this, because she is, synonymous with not breaking. Like, right. That's Heidi Gardner. She's a full pro when it comes to this. And I think that made the moment so much better, because you don't expect this from Heidi. I honestly, I felt like that screen cap, that moment of her turning around and laughing, is going to be on montages for forever. Like, it's going to be, as when we get to the 50th anniversary of the show, we're going to see that moment, because that was a classic SNL moment of her not being able to keep it together. And I don't always celebrate those moments, but I think that for her, this was so infrequent and such a special one that, like we were talking about with Gosling, this was infectious. You couldn't help but laugh at the laugh. So it worked for me, Gary.
Yeah, and what we used to do, and I can't think of a specific sketch, but if something worked with prosthetics that was funny, those prosthetics would be heightened for the air show. Something, and I bet you in this case, the gums probably more than that. But Heidi's in a place now where the device that worked, she can't use it anymore. Because if she laughs next week or the next week, we're going to be sitting here going, okay, all right. It works because it was genuine. And if it becomes a thing now for her, and I don't think it will, I think she prides herself on staying in the bit.
Yeah, Gary, let me ask you one more thing. The fact that SNL put on YouTube the thumbnail with the reveal of a Beavis dressed up there. So if you wanted to share the sketch with your friends, it was hard to do that online. Do you have an opinion on that? Because I saw that discourse going around on social media about, like, how do I really share the sketch, because the reveal in the sketch gets ruined by sharing it.
I don't know how I think about it. So in the YouTube version, you're saying that they had a...
Yeah, Robert Smigel posted a tweet this week where he was saying, this is a really hilarious sketch, but there's, the reveal of the sketch is ruined by the way that it's presented online, which is interesting, right? Because you would never get that from watching a live show. But
I would agree. Leave the tip off. Not everybody has to get every joke. Not everybody has to get every imitation. Stay true to what it is. Most of us got Beavis and Butthead immediately. If you didn't, well, then you don't get to participate in that joke. You're not the audience we're looking for. So you always have, like, I did a sketch, and I hate to keep bringing it back to me. That sounds, but
we're here to listen to you. Yeah.
I did a sketch called, it was called A Kid Comes Home from College. And I confessed to my father that I like girls, and you realize I was raised by a gay father, right? Well, they now call the sketch online, I'm Straight. They gave it a title. Well, that ruins the joke. It ruins the joke. So now there's no setup to be surprised about. But they do that, and I hate it. I hate it. Let it live where it is. Again, not everybody has to be in on the joke. They're better when they're esoteric in a way,
That is a great point, Gary. And I appreciate the anecdotes and the insights. You were all able to join us for the top of the show tonight. So I just wanted to get as much of your takes as possible. So I just want to say thank you. We can't wait to have you back.
Yes, I have a board meeting. I joined everything.
I have to honor
a symphony board meeting. I'm so sorry, but this was like, I thought we did 10 minutes.
Well,
we've
we'll
been
have
going
to have you
for
back
a half hour. All right. Well, hey, guys, thank you so much. I really enjoy this. And you can have me back anytime. And
Please
look, the sun's gone. I'm just now a guy with a suntan. I don't look like I'm on the space shuttle anymore with the horizon coming through the porthole. All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gary. We don't keep you.
Real pleasure. Bill, so good to meet you. John,
you too.
Love being your friend, pal. Catch you later.
Always, Gary. Thank you so much. And Bill, Kirstin, and I will continue the conversation. We'll talk more about this episode. So, Bill, let me get your thoughts on this sketch. This is a sketch that everyone cannot stop talking about, Beavis and Butthead. So what did you think of this one?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, the Heidi thing is so great. And the first person I thought of was Phil Hartman. If you know, when he broke in as Frankenstein and went through that wall. I mean, that was one of the few times the glue of that show back for 8 years broke. So that was the first thing I thought of. But even though I realized that we had seen Google Talk back in season 43, I believe it was, this was nothing like that. I'm sorry. This was so far superior to that. I loved Beavis and Butthead when I was a kid. I still get a chuckle when I watch them. It's just one of those things that if you grew up with it, it kind of started all of that irreverent animated humor, after The Simpsons, of course. But to see Heidi break that sincerely was fantastic. That's the kind of breaking I'm here for. not the nonsensical stuff that we sometimes see. Knowing that that's not something that she does was just so great. And then Gary was in a sketch. We didn't get to talk about it, as he did mention Don Rickles, but when he was in the Saint Don of Verona sketch with Don Rickles, and he's trying to make everybody break, and Piscopo breaks first. Gary holds out until the last thing when he says something like, "I hope Eddie Murphy robs your house." And then Gary and Julia both lose it. And it's one of those things where, it's a 5-6 minute sketch and they held out to the very bitter end with this comic genius. And I think this is similar in a lot of ways. To be able to see somebody like this do that was fantastic. A lot of funny jokes, even though it was plenty of sight gags. I think it covered it well.
Yeah, so I thought that this sketch was, 100 times better than that Google Talk sketch. I hadn't seen it since it first aired in season 43, and I went to rewatch it again after the sketch, and I was like dumbfounded by that, how much I misremembered about that original sketch. Like, everyone remembered, like, okay, Mikey dressed as Bart Simpson, and I guess that's the point. Or Bert Sampson was it? But the everything else in it, like the characterizations of the audience, like the whole, like they would go to Beck Bennett for the social scene, Leslie Jones like laughing. It was just not clean. Like, it was a good bit, but it wasn't clean. But this sketch was so much more than a sight gag. Like, this was a really well-structured sketch where you had an escalation point between Beavis and Butthead. And then, Keenan's reactions here, I felt like he didn't oversell it, which was a really, really key point. And to me, the key for this sketch is these moments here. I'll start with Ryan.
I'm sorry? Me? You're talking about me? I have no idea what's going on. I'm sorry.
It's the dumbfoundedness that they never like the characterization here that Beavis and Butthead, or Jeff or whatever the name is, never actually watched Beavis and Butthead. So in the world of the sketch, they don't know that they look like these characters, and they're playing it dumb where like Mikey's like,
"Oh, I'm sorry, me?"
And then Longfellow has to be like, "They're talking about you, dude." And that is the greatness of this sketch. It's not just how the sight gag and the Heidi laughing, all that stuff is part of it, but it's the writing here that also really works and makes this a slam dunk for me. So Kirstin, how did you feel about this one?
It goes without saying, this was the top sketch of the night, and I will remember this one. And I rewatched it multiple times and snot cried my way through each viewing. It was like everything about it was hilarious. I didn't watch Beavis and Butthead, but I know who they are. And as soon as I saw him, I knew exactly the nose, the hair, everything. I agree with you that they didn't try to inhabit those characters because that would have been too obvious. The fact that they played it as oblivious, and I love the moment when they introduce themselves to each other. So straight. Oh, no, like, hi. Like, all about it. And Keenan's disbelief, I agree. He played it perfectly here. Just the quick side glance he took. Like, is anyone else clocking this? When Chloe came up to ask a question and he said, like, no. How long have you guys been friends? Like, he was still in it. I love the ending. Sometimes, sketches don't always have a really great ending, but this one perfectly, just a quick view, enough that you went, that's, oh my gosh, Mike Judge. Yes. And it was gone. Was lovely. Hats off to the hair and makeup people. Incredible work. And the idea that Heidi only saw a more muted version of what that was going to be, and that resulted in this very genuine reaction from her, felt a lot like Will Ferrell. And how he would do these things to his cast members. I think in the clothing store one, when he comes out on the kind of motorized wheelchair, and Sean Hayes and them, they weren't expecting that. That was not rehearsal. And so he would do those things all the time. And whether he was trying to just keep his colleagues amused, after a long week, or that's just the way he did it. I felt a little bit of that Mikey Day was like, watch me level this up to 11 and I will break Heidi, whether he intended to or not. I love that he did. When I showed some of the people I work with today, I made them close their eyes for the exact reason you were talking about, because on screen it said Beavis and Butthead. And I was like, close your eyes. You can't look until it goes away. And another hats off to both Michael Longfellow and the extras. How they didn't break or laugh. I mean, come on, hand out some Oscars. They didn't, even watching Heidi, and they held it in. They didn't smirk or nothing. So all in all, this was a sketch that is a season top for me.
Yeah, it was really fantastic because really the last time they did this, Mikey's character mentioned how he's always made fun of for being Bart Simpson-like. And this time it was a very different characterization that they went with. So even though this is a sequel, it's almost like its own sketch. And you know, I mentioned this last week with the secretary sketch that Heidi did with Kristen Wiig. It is sort of rare that we get a second version of a sketch that is much better than the first. And here is another clear example of that. With this sketch, I do want to talk about another moment of discourse that I've noticed online. And Bill, I know you said you sort of refrain from, you know, seeing opinions on the show. So let me tell you, there is a very clear camp that is not so thrilled about this sketch because they feel like we're rewarding people for breaking and saying like, that's SNL. SNL is encouraging people breaking. And then there's a lot of people online who are the opposite, who are saying, this is the funniest thing I've seen in years. And I think this is a fascinating sketch to analyze from that perspective, because we're bringing in audiences back to the show in a positive way. Like, think about where we were 5 years ago, where so many people would come back to SNL to hate watch the show. And now people are tuning in every now and then to catch a moment of greatness or lightning in a bottle. So for me, I more lean to the fact that like, this is good for the show. But how do you feel about it?
Well, I'm firmly in the camp, as I said, of if it works, it works. I don't want to see it every sketch. But you have stuff like the original Debbie Downer at Disneyland, and you know, even Cowbell, which Kirstin references Will Ferrell doing this. He did the same thing in that, where he wore a different shirt to a smaller shirt so he can make everybody laugh. So those are the kind of things. Yes, absolutely, I'm okay with this. That is not the Carol Burnetting of SNL. It's the laughing at nothing, the inside jokes that the audience isn't getting, only the cast is aware of, and maybe the host. I don't like that. But this, I'm all for this. And if it brings new people in, even for a minute, I'm okay with that too, because I think this is, this is one of those things that is going to be on a reel forever. Heidi breaking, even Gosling and Mikey as they're shaking hands and start to break. I think those are moments that are fantastic. And yeah, we have to see that, not every week, not even every month, but this is one of those things that if it happens a couple times a season, I'm fully in the camp for.
Ironically, it reminds me a little bit of the discourse when the first Alien Encounter sketch occurred with Ryan Gosling, where it was like, oh, wow, this is the first sketch in a long time where I'm back into SNL. And I just see like a lot of people saying, okay, I haven't checked out SNL in years, but this is the sketch that brought me back in. So for me, it's very positive stuff. I think that this is exactly what you want, especially as you're headed towards an anniversary season, to, you know, bring the eyeballs back, show that there's talented sketch performers here. And SNL is about these moments. We're not in an age right now where SNL is being performed for the 300 people in the audience. And it's about, like, you know, Gary mentioned, counterculture. Let's do the bees because the network doesn't want us to. Now it's about capturing the lightning of culture. Like, how do you create monoculture when there is none outside of the show? And SNL every now and then can create that moment that forces people, no matter what your background is, to turn around and be like, this is funny. And this was a moment for me where it's very rare in nowadays, but it does happen once a year, maybe twice a year. And I think these was one of those moments that really was, this is one of those moments that was really lightning in a bottle. So Kirstin, any other thoughts on this sketch before we keep going?
Agree so wholeheartedly with everything you said. And listen, it's live television. We don't get a lot of spontaneity anymore, right? Things are really, police is not the right word. Things are really careful. People are very careful about things. There are delays and there are all sorts of ways that things are edited. But this being so raw and live makes it even that much funnier and exciting.
Absolutely. All right, Bill, what sketch do you want us to talk about?
I want to talk about the pre-tape, Get That Boy Back. And we've got Ego and Feynman and Trost singing about getting back at these boyfriends who were leaving them, even though they were a meal, they're going for a snack. And, getting to see Chloe Trost sing is such a delight. If it happened every week, I would be fine with that. And this is a different take. We don't usually get the country side of pre-tapes. I'm not a country fan by any stretch. I don't really care for Chris Stapleton. Don't kill me on that one. Listen.
That's crazy
I don't,
talk.
It's not
Same.
my.
I've
It's not
never
my.
heard him.
It's not my music.
That man is an angel.
But he really won me over in this pre-tape. He was there for the comic moments, putting those shoes on as they were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But Trost is the star of this. The wild wall woman, and she gave me Elizabeth Moss vibes, which I had not thought before. Like, I don't know, it was her facial expressions, but I was really getting some vibes from her with that. And Heidi was fantastic too, as the mom who's slowly losing her mind as she sees this. She has the same eyes as the wall woman. This was a lot of fun. Second week in a row that we only got one pre-tape proper. So kind of strange in this current SNL that's the case. But this was a lot of fun, and glad to see Chloe get some more time.
Yeah, I mean, you had two pre-tapes and they were both fantastic. So I'd rather than produce two great pre-tapes and, only one made it to air, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But, I'd rather do two pre-tapes that are really strong than them work on three and have the quality dip at any point. But this was fantastic. We've been waiting for Chloe Trost to have, leading sketches. She did one with the Airbnb thing a few weeks ago, but this was a major role for her that I think was equivalent to some of the singing sketches we saw in the first half of the season. I thought everybody was really strong here. I even think like Chloe, Feynman, Ego, they were great in this. You mentioned Chris Stapleton, who was just fantastic. Heidi was so good in this as well. I love the chorus here because sometimes over the last few years, they'll create these songs and it's more about the joke than it is about the music. And I do feel that for music videos on SNL, you have to find balance. And I think that this chorus was so catchy in itself that there was balance there.
You had a whole ass meal, but you left me for a snack. You better mark my words, I'm gonna get that boy back.
It was great. Like it's a really, really catchy song. Like I could see a major country artist re-recording this song potentially and like putting it out on the charts if they don't, release it from the SNL, auteurs. So I thought that this was a great pre-tape. Kirstin, did you enjoy it?
I did. It was great. I love that it started off almost as some of these do, where there's, an ensemble of either the male or the female performers, and they're, just kind of venting on a topic or something. And this had a twist within its group, right? So it seemed at first like, hey, we're all going to get together and us girls are going to talk about how we key cars and we get back at that guy. And then Chloe Trost, leveled that up with her psychological torture, which a lot of women know people that do this if they aren't one themselves, because the real way to mess with someone is not to do the obvious things, but is to get in their heads. So
what category do you call it?
I am not that, but I am aware of that person. Okay. It's a tool that every person, not just women, but that every person can pull out if you really wanted to, if you're going to play the long con there and you're like going to switch those shoes out and not just key the car. It was a brilliant spin. And I loved that finally we got to see Chloe sing for singing, and not just because they thought, oh, just make her sing there and make her sing here. Like, no, this was the right reason for her to sing. And it was a catchy song. I would probably get roasted for this, but I feel like country music is sometimes that simple. So that's why you like it so much, because it's that kind of basic song. It's like a diary entry. Just in general, people are going to come down on me for saying that about country, but they're basically Dear Diaries. I thought it was super fun. All the little moments with the, the wall painting and stuff. And Chris Stapleton, who knew? He was really fun in that. He was not so bad. Sometimes when someone's not an actor, you know they're not an actor or they're not used to performing or what have you, but he fit right in. He was fine. Again, I don't really know him, but his performances seem nice, and he was a great addition to this.
I thought he was great. I think the line for me that really got me in this sketch was when he said this.
She thought I was cheating, but I was just sexing my sister.
It was great. Like that was, and there was a real story here. Like you could have done this sketch. That's what I really love about it, is that you could have done this sketch without it being a music video. Like the sketch itself was really funny, but the music video was also really good. So you just had the perfect combination here to get a great segment on SNL, and one of the better pre-tapes of the year, one of the best music videos of the last few years, in my opinion. So yeah, this, it's almost a shame this was in an episode full of other things to talk about, because it's not going to get the hype. And on a regular week of Saturday Night Live, people may have been talking about this sketch way more. So great job to Trost, to PDD, Jimmy Fowley, Cara O'Sullivan for putting this sketch together. Just really fantastic. Kirstin, what about a sketch that you want us to talk about from the night?
Well, right after the monologue, we got a kind of familiar view of a house. There's that couch, and we've seen these types of setups a lot. But I love where they took this. This one was the engagement with Andrew and Ego as, I guess, a married or together couple, and Ryan or Harrison and Chloe Fineman as a newly engaged couple. And what seems like a premise that you're not sure will go somewhere, all of a sudden gets quite hilarious when the ladies leave the room and Ryan starts admitting in a very effective stage whisper that he thinks he made a mistake. And he plays this in a beautiful way that escalates right to the very last moment, that he clearly has an entire plan around this mistake he's made and how he's going to upend his life and move to Istanbul. And the escalation is ridiculous and funny. The fact that he denies it and makes Andrew the fool is funny. Andrew doing his best and lines like, did you see JoJo Siwa changed her look? Which is extremely topical. That is very of a few days ago. And the kind of really clever quip that Dismukes is becoming extremely well known and loved for. I just loved all of this. It was cringy. It was awkward. It had escalation. I wish the ladies had a little bit more to do. But Ryan pulled this off really, really well.
Yeah, I think this was really strong. He wasn't as breaky in this sketch. Like he had moments where he was really smiling, but he wasn't. He didn't. The sketch wasn't about him breaking. In fact, it was about him whispering, which I really felt was what made the sketch for me. Because if it was just a conversation between him and Andrew Dismukes, I don't think the sketch plays the same at all. I think this sketch works because he's just trying to say it so quietly and secretly that the humor in like, oh, the girls are right back there, so he needs to just tell him right away that I think I made a mistake. It's so funny to me. And obviously the escalation and absurdity here is fantastic. And again, I felt like second week in a row, Andrew Dismukes, opposite of a host, really holds his own. Bill, how do you feel about this sketch?
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. Dismukes is on a hot streak. And this is the kind of stuff that we were hoping for. We were so upset last year with how little he was getting on. And we've seen so much more. I mean, he is the comeback player of the year for sure, with only 3 episodes left. And he played against Ryan.
I think he has MVP consideration.
Absolutely. He's in the conversation. I think this was Ryan's best performance of the night by far, partially because he didn't break, except for that one moment towards the end. But this was great. I love the line about I found a guy on Groupon for facial reconstruction. It's so ridiculous. And then that moment at the very end where he's like, I'll see you in Turkey, and he kisses Dismukes on the forehead and walks out. Oh, chef's kiss, man. Just fantastic. We were off and running after this. Loved this sketch.
I really felt second week in a row that we had just a really beautifully written sketch to kick off the night. Like we used to complain for weeks, I felt, throughout the last couple of years about like sketch order and like how we wish something aired earlier in the night. I think back to back weeks with Jumanji and with the engagement, like these are the sketches that need to kick things off. They're a little bit more low key, but you had high energy cold open, high energy monologue, and then we dipped a little bit in energy, but the subtleness didn't prepare us for what we were about to see, and then the performers carried us through. So I think, like I said, the absurdity of the lines here, the going to Istanbul and all the things that Bill described, I found a guy in Groupon who could do facial reconstruction, all of that was really great. And I think it's Andrew Dismuke's just face as he continues to get frustrated of like, you dude, like, why are you involving me in this? And I think this back and forth exchange like really sold me on this sketch.
I am not a part of this. You're the main part of this, Brad.
Do you know?
Even go ahead.
I was gonna say I love what you're saying about like this feels more fully formed almost, and in being fully formed, it has just a little bit more heartbeat, right? So moments like when Chloe Fineman first leaves the couch and he's kind of, playing the devoted, like, no, don't go. I can't bear to be apart for a moment. Like there was enough, he sat with it enough that he was coming up with things like that made it feel more real. And it's all those little touches. And that I imagine has got to be so hard to do on the fly when you're reading the prompter and, like it's had last minute changes and it's a really quick draft. But if you've done it a few times, then you then find those moments that make it really magical. So I agree. Like there's some great writing that maybe is happening earlier than Friday. That's kind of marinating a little bit. That's creating those moments for the actors.
I also think it's really interesting here. We talked about Dismukes and his, MVP consideration or comeback player of the year, but a lot of the moments that are on his resume for the season are Andrew Dismuke's written moments. But this is a sketch that's written by Mike DiCenzo and Jake Nordwind, Jimmy Falley and Cara O'Sullivan, so two different writing partners. And this is a sketch that, if I believe I understood online, Jake Nordwind had, written and even maybe performed before Saturday Night Live. And he had been trying to get this sketch on for a while, or at least find the right vehicle. And I amazing that you had this in the back pocket, because this is a really great concept. But then to choose Andrew Dismukes as the lead in this sketch when this could have gone to another cast member, I think was fascinating, because it's really showing how much the show trusts him, how much he's becoming a face where he's going to be on in prime time now. And after all the discourse with Jumanji last week, I think people are really starting to look at Andrew Dismukes as a potential star of the show. So it's everything we could have possibly wanted for him, and I'm thrilled at his trajectory. I think we're going to really enjoy these next few years of what he's going to bring to the show.
I agree. Dismukes for mayor.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about what happened on Weekend Update this week. I thought this was a really fascinating Weekend Update where Michael Longfellow first appears as himself. This is a guy who, like Dismukes last year, we were like, where is he? Why is he not on the show very much? I think he's been the biggest what if of his sophomore season. Really just came on strong at the beginning of his career, had some great moments of stand-up on the show, some good bit roles in sketches, but hasn't, put up hasn't padded his stats in a way we'd had hoped for this season. But here he gets a moment where he gets to come on as himself and talk to the audience and have some fun with them, do a little of this.
Hey, girls. It's Longfellow. Don't get excited. It's just a name.
And I think he needed this, really, because you could just see his charisma on screen. So I felt like Update this week used took advantage of an opportunity to get him out there to really push somebody that they haven't had on the show. And then we switch over to Caitlin Clark, who was our cameo. And Caitlin, to me, was somebody who SNL, I didn't think they could get her in this moment. She's that big of a star, one of the biggest athletes in the world, is being drafted tonight, #1 overall pick into the WNBA. And I guess they had this little break between the tournament and the WNBA season or the draft to get her on the show. But the fact that they did was so great and so representative of like, SNL's place in culture. So for me, I thought that was great. And her back and forth with Che, with the whole
Caitlin Clark broke the record for 3-pointers in a single season. And I have 3-pointers for Michael Che. 1B, 2 funnier, 3 dumbass.
I just think her being there as a foil for Che was a great beat to hit this season, given all the discourse he has had with women's basketball. So for me, I think this is one of the best updates of the season, Kirstin. And I'm so curious how you felt about Michael Longfellow and Caitlin Clark cameoing this week.
I agree. Michael Longfellow, he needed that. He needed a bit more, some FaceTime, and, his shtick, and, that kind of direct to camera, like that kind of way he has of delivering. I was ready for that. And I think he needed it. I was also really glad for Caitlin to be on, because I will admit I may be getting a little bit over Michael Che's misogynistic humor. Like, I know he's playing it for fun and stuff, but if there was ever a person I think I needed Caitlin to come in, that was like a salve for the soul there, for her to come in and just take some jabs. It felt due, and what great timing to be able to, get her on the show. Her end line, the way she closed that, well, you don't have a girlfriend. Like, oh, that's my chef's kiss moment, where that was her final dunk, and that was perfect, because it's always tough for someone who's not been on TV to come on and deliver comedy. That's not going to be easy. That's like asking me to go play basketball. So the fact that she nailed that last line was all I needed. And I kind of felt like she spoke for a lot of women, and I'm sure just others alike, in saying, okay, Che, like, you take it down from 11 just a little bit. I get that that's your brand of humor, but it's very quickly becoming kind of less funny. And I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him, but turn it down.
Yeah. And rightfully so. I mean, I can't speak to, how it feels to see or hear Michael Che make these jokes week after week. I could tell you, as somebody who's watched a lot of Saturday Night Live, I still do get some Norm Macdonald vibes from Michael Che, in terms of like willing to take a joke really far, being really dry in the humor, and then having like a little bit of a laugh at himself, even if it doesn't always come across, sometimes it does. But, is he as beloved to the point where we're like, yay, it's Che, like we were like, yay, it's Norm? I don't know. So I do wonder if he can get away with it all the time. And it's almost like people love Che a lot more when he does a joke swap with Colin, or now a joke swap with Caitlin. And it's a fascinating thing to think about. So, Bill, how did you feel about Weekend Update tonight and the correspondence we got?
I felt really good with both of what you were saying. But like the history of having a female athlete on SNL is so sparse. I was kind of raking my brain trying to think. You got Chris Everett, Carrie Strug, Nancy Kerrigan. It's hard to get much past that. To have someone of this magnitude on the show at the height of her fame, it warms my heart, and I hope this is a good bastion for the future. But yeah, I'd love to see Che put in his place as well. It is funny to see him do these jokes. I don't know if he's seen them ahead of time. I don't know if they did it as a straight up joke swap where he didn't see this, but he certainly seemed to not know what was coming. And then Longfellow, like, who knew he was this sex symbol? Did I miss that? Like the woos in the audience when he came out.
I think you missed it.
I must have missed it, because I was like, what? Like, it felt like, not to bring up Fallon again, but like Fallon in like his first and second season, when he would come on stage and the women would just go crazy when he came out. That's what it felt like. And it felt like part of his stand-up act, but it was really, really funny. And I love his jokes about having one plate if he lived by himself, stacking up the takeout containers, and then once they reached the ceiling, he'd move back in with his mom. Like, that's such a great line. My only complaint with Weekend Update is 2 OJ jokes. Really? Nothing more than that? like this is beyond a notorious killer dying. This was your bread and butter for 3 or 4 years. One of your most beloved Weekend Update anchors was fired in part because of the OJ jokes. All the main people that were part of that, Don Ohlmeyer, OJ, and Norm, are all now gone. Why didn't you lean more into this and even show a clip of Norm for 2 or 3 minutes? And
that's what I said.
Like, why didn't that happen? I didn't need to see Keenan. I saw that Keenan was cut. That's fine that he didn't come out. I mean, but you should have done something more. And he didn't get a bumper either.
Well, that I did not expect.
No, that was not going to happen.
Yeah, that was not going to happen. But I think they didn't prepare any Norm jokes because they had Keenan potentially coming out and playing OJ. And, I don't know at what point in the week the Caitlin Clark thing came together, but if Caitlin doesn't show up, I think we get Keenan on Update as OJ. So it's sort of like beating a dead horse if you do it like that. But, for me, I definitely
dead Bronco, you mean, John?
Yes, exactly. Dead Bronco. It would have been fitting to have the glove would have fit if we would have had some moments on Update for me. But say love you. So yeah, I enjoy this Weekend Update. I do feel, sort of like the Kate episode, like there was a special moment here that I think we're going to take away when the season's over. And that was a lot of fun. Bill, anything else on your list from the episode that you want to do some rapid fire from the episode on?
There's not a lot left, really. I mean, we had another kind of truncated week, but I think the bringing the Dr. Please back was certainly a choice. Not something I even occurred to me, but I did get some laughs out of them feeding cookie crumbles to themselves with a red spoon.
I forgot to ask you before the show started if
would you like to try some cookie crumbles?
It's how close to chicken fingers is cookie crumbles?
Well, you have to have the chicken fingers first before you have the cookie crumbles, right? So, boy, it's damn close.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that this had its moments. Like, I think Ryan Gosling elevated this sketch for me.
I didn't kill him.
But it wasn't, it didn't, there were moments in the episode that certainly were much cleaner for me and stronger. Kirstin, anything on this cookie crumble sketch?
I mean, it was absurd. And I'm a fan of Bowen's absurdity. If that one had been in the oven for just 10 minutes more, I think it would have been brilliant because they had something really good that they were working on there. It was out a little too early.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Kirstin, you always come with a list of interesting moments from the episode and stuff that you want to talk about. So anything else on your list?
Oh, my stray thoughts. Well, first of all, I said in my notes, holy crap, it's Kate and the aliens. I mean, I couldn't believe that's how they kicked it off. And that was pretty amazing. I also wrote down the my grumpy, dumpy, weenhole, beanhole, and all those things. Or staring down the barrel of my south mouth. Or it's like a doorbell, no dong. A broken doorbell, no dong. Like they're just coming up with all of those ways to describe the anatomy is quite clever and ridiculous. And someone is embracing their 10-year-old boy, and it's wonderful. I love that Marcelo is getting so much airtime. Like I didn't think Accent Dudes was a great sketch, but I do love that he seems like he's going to be around for a long time. So that was a bit of another stray thought. And if you went online and saw Papyrus 2, I hope everyone was happy because we got some good closure there.
Is that the Canadian way of saying papyrus?
Papyrus? Yeah. Did I say papyrus? Yeah. You're right. Papyrus. Yeah.
Usually I'm the one messing that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I want to talk about before we're done here tonight. I'll go to my tweet on this, which is I said this week that I think that what Saturday Night Live did was one of the most fascinating things I've seen in my time covering the show, where instead of, just posting Papyrus 2 online after maybe it wasn't ready or whatever the reason it didn't make the show. I said last night, for the first time in its history, SNL promoted a sketch on its live show that would be arriving online later. Cut sketches have been put online for years, but promoting them as an extension of the live show is a fascinating paradigm shift for the future of SNL. And that's what I thought was so interesting, that they did this. So they go to this band shot where they say, like, Papyrus 2 will be coming out later tonight. This could be a complete unique one-off situation where a beloved sketch is getting a sequel. So they have to, notify, go check this out. But never in the history of the show have they promoted online content as an extension of the live show. It was always like a negative that if your sketch got cut from the air, that it would end up online. It was just like lucky, right? It was like, oh man, my sketch didn't make it in the show, but at least they're going to show this version from the rehearsal show and put it up online. Well, this is, fascinating now that they're decided to potentially promote content that didn't make the show and encourage people to go check it out online, because this could sort of shift the way that the show is produced down the line, where they may not care, cast members and producers, whether something makes the live show or not. They may just say, maybe this is better content for online. So what is really canon here, Bill, I think is an interesting discussion to talk about. So how do you feel about all of that?
The canon part of it is the most interesting part to me, because you have somebody coming back like Kyle, who, gets no credit for being in this episode. It's like, that's kind of crazy to think. He's been off the show for 2 years now. He was on the show for a very long time. And to have him as a prominent role in this pre-tape that did not air on network television. Where do you put him? Like, you can't even really canonize it. Right. But I think it's going to be one of those things where 5 years from now, it's going to be like YouTube was in 05 and 06, where it's like, well, wait, they haven't always done this. I think it's something they should have been doing. I don't think you're taking any marks off for having it online, because honestly, I mean, how many views does Beavis and Butthead now have on YouTube? Probably in the millions, right? So
yeah.
Is that not more than watch the live show? So are you taking points off because people have gone back to watch it on YouTube as opposed to seeing it live on TV? You and I and Kirstin will always watch the show live. The people in this community, when they can, will watch it live. But there is another generation coming up that's going to watch almost everything on the computer, on their iPad, on their phone. And I think you have to start to cater to that.
Well, look, I've felt for a while now, and I've talked about this a little bit on our feedback shows, that once Lorne leaves the show, and I don't think it's going to be next year, it could be in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, but whenever Lorne decides to move on from the show, I think the vultures are going to start coming out. So, SNL has basically killed off every other sketch comedy show. I think that, as soon as SNL doesn't have its fearless leader, it's very possible that a company like Netflix that has a cajillion dollars decides to produce their own sketch comedy show that airs on a weekly basis on Netflix, that maybe you can watch. Maybe it's not live, maybe you can watch it live. And then you go to Netflix and they don't have a upper limit or lower limit as far as how long the show could be. They're just going to put the best content there. So SNL being held to a 90-minute time slot is potentially dangerous for the longevity of the show. So I do wonder if this is a strategic decision on their part to basically say YouTube is our extension of the live show, and it's no longer a negative to be posted there. It's now, this is where you get extra content from the show. So Kirstin, what do you think about that discussion and, sort of where we're headed?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it feels a little late to the party, to be honest. I mean, that's how people are consuming content, right? In little snack cookie crumbles. That's how it's happening. The two thoughts I had, in addition to everything you're saying, one was there's got to be a certain amount of validation that both the writers and the actors get when something was cut, but it goes on air and it gets millions of views. And listen, no one, even Lorne, is going to get it right every time, right? What to cut, what not to cut. It's art and science, it's all of the things. So I imagine there's some great validation in the metrics, right? That, yeah, that was damn funny and it should have been on air, but guess what? It has millions of views online and I feel good about that. And it has impacted beyond just my own satisfaction. Maybe that will influence, what happens to me on the show. I also wonder, to the point of, at some point Lauren is leaving, is he really has been the make it or break it. He controls that. And I wonder how much promoting something else is almost other folks dipping their toe and testing their instincts. What is the right way for this to go? So if it's not going to be live, well then, hey, I would have put this on, let's promote it and see what happens. Then it's just another way to kind of accelerate people's move to those things online in a more formal manner, but also for other people to test their instincts on what should make the live show and what shouldn't, if he's not there.
It's also a question of like, what is their true revenue generation model? Like, is Saturday Night Live making, their bread and butter from advertising through NBC and NBC assigning them a budget? Or is SNL, YouTube, Google, who owns YouTube, the advertising revenue they get from the channel, the partnerships that they have with T-Mobile, where that's pushing them to then create extra content, sketch rewinds, behind the sketch, all that stuff. Is that now becoming one of their main revenue streams, to the point where the show should be produced from the point of like, let's just get as much content out there, regardless of whether it makes the air show or not, I think is something to consider here, as the entire world of media has been changing and will continue to change for the next few years. So I just think it's something that, as podcasters of this show, we have to continue to have this conversation about, because I want to continue to cover the show as much as we can in the traditional sense, but there will be a day potentially where we are not just covering the show that airs from 11:30 to 1 a.m. Saturday Night Live might be a week's worth of content that is posted online. And it will be fascinating to have that discussion whenever it gets there. But, this could be a turning point, and I thought we should point it out and have that discussion while it's happening.
John, it's an omni-channel world. Like, no one is, buying media just for the TV show, as you say. They are packaging deals. They are leveraging this way and that, insert all your marketing buzzwords. And podcasts are a part of the mix. And so, where we think like, oh, would they, we love a Gary coming on the show and all these folks, we will be a part of that mix. That's just another spoke in the wheel of all the ways that they market and promote and integrate the show. So I think it's a smart and more modern way to look at it. And maybe that's some of this kind of injection of new blood that potentially is on the scene as this rounds out to its 50th season. And they look at potential competitors. I mean, a Mad TV launching now, or Key and Peele, like those are some serious competitors that could, if they had launched right now, have more of a contention for some of the kind of top spot with SNL. Now they've got 50 years, but those other shows are fantastic too. They just somehow didn't last as long, right?
I think, SNL has three main points that, competitive advantages. Lorne Michaels is one. The institution, the New York of it all. I think, the history of the show, the reverence for the show. I think that's number two. And three is the budget. I think the budget, to be able to produce these shows, the talented people that are there all week to be able to, go from conception to production to airing. It's unmatched. It's so hard to do. So a competitor to come around and challenge the show would have to have not only a budget and means to be able to produce these sketches, but also the gravitas to be able to pull in celebrities and fill that cultural void. So, I think it's going to happen. I think we're probably a few years away from it, but it's going to be fascinating to watch. Overall, Papyrus 2, I think, was great. So even though it ended up online, it was fantastic. So for me, I hope that we do continue to see the best stuff on the air show for as long as humanly possible. That's my hope. Let's talk about our MVPs for the week from week number 17, everything that did air on the show. So we ask you every Monday to vote for your top MVPs from the week. Could be the host, musical guest, cast members, or cameos. And I want to know who you guys think the top three MVPs were from week number 17, Ryan Gosling and Chris Stapleton. Bill, who do you think it was?
I'm going to go with Heidi, Chloe Trost, and Dismukes.
Why do you say that?
Heidi had two really great moments in this episode between the pre-tape as the mother, and then of course the Beavis and Butthead sketch. Chloe singing her heart out, and Dismukes being Dismukes and having one of the funniest sketches again this week. So
yeah, for sure. With regards to the stats for the weeks, Gosling was in 8 sketches. Appearances from Emily Blunt, Caitlin Clark, Kate McKinnon, Chris Stapleton, 2 performances and 1 sketch. His wife, Morgan Stapleton, 1 performance, 4 sketches for Mikey Day and Chloe Feynman, 3 for Keenan, Heidi, and Dismukes, 2 for Ego, Bowen, JJ, and Sarah, 1 for Punky this week. For the feature players, 3 for Molly, 3 for Longfellow. So that's interesting. More sketches than we usually see for those 2, at least this season. 2 sketches for Trost, Marcelo, and Devin. Kirstin, who's your top 3 for the week?
Gosling. Obs. Mikey Day and his gums. I mean, between writing and performing, all of the applause. And then Heidi, because it's such a memorable moment. Like, what a moment. And the fact that we're all talking about, wow, someone broke her, but we know she'll be right back up on that pedestal next week. Like, it's a formidable skill not to break like that. So I think we're all going to cherish this moment when she so authentically and genuinely laughed her ass off. So yeah, Gosling, Mikey Day, and Heidi.
All right, let's see who the MVPs were for week number 17. And here we go. Ryan Gosling, first place, 36% of the vote. People loved his performance this week. If you like the giggling, it wasn't just about that, honestly. I thought he's, like I said, his energy was fantastic. Happy to have him back after so long. So 36% of the vote. Number 2 was Mikey Day. Butthead himself got 15% of the vote. Had a good week this week. Caitlin Clark came in 3rd place with 14% of the vote. So people were happy to have her on the show. Chloe Trost comes in 4th place here with 7%. So great job, Chloe, for your pre-tape. Heidi Gardner at 6% had a major moment for her career. Like you said, Kirstin will be on her reel for forever, this moment that she had on the Beavis and Butthead sketch. So 6% of the vote from Heidi. All right, that is our MVP voting for week number 17. Let's turn our attention for a few minutes to week number 18, which will happen on May 4th, the first episode of our final run of the season, where we will have host and musical guest Dua Lipa, so double duety coming in for that episode. Dua Lipa was previously a musical guest during the season 43 episode with Natalie Portman and the season 46 episode with Kristen Wiig. I do believe she appeared in a sketch in that Kristen Wiig episode where she was part of the USO performance sketch. She came in for the Army major. So Bill, are you excited to see Dua Lipa perform on the show?
I'm very excited. This is somebody that I've been waiting for to host for quite a number of years. Her album drops the day before she hosts, which is fantastic and such great timing. She's already got 3 singles off this album that are out there and killing it. So, the double duty host is always a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get, but I think she's going to do really well with this gig, and I'm very, very excited to see her.
Yeah, I think this is somebody that people have been asking to see for a long time at the show. She has a big personality. It'll be fun to see how she does. Double Duty is always a very interesting type of show. The other SNL note that we have in the universe is that Melissa Villaseñor once played her in a sketch. So that's the only impression of Dua Lipa that we've ever had. But I'm excited to see what she can do on the show. Kirstin, what are your thoughts on Dua Lipa coming in?
It's funny that you say she's a big personality because I feel like I don't know her at all. I know she's a great singer. I know she's beautiful. I know that she's done some movie parts and that she's got something big coming out. I think maybe a Netflix thing. So I'm very curious. I know that she fits really well in that kind of Sydney Sweeney, Jacob Elordi category, which is you're just so hot. So I'm curious to see what they do with her. I am very curious to see what she's like when she's not singing with a microphone or in kind of the glorified hot girl role. I'm waiting to be pleasantly surprised. I think overall, it got me thinking about season 50 and, okay, so who they're choosing now makes me wonder who they're choosing for 50. Then I thought, oh my gosh, would Gosling come back for 50? Like, who's coming back for 50? So it started to wonder now, like, it's a game of cards, right? And like, who's going to finish out 49? Who are we saving back? And that's kind of where my head started going. I was like, okay, Dua's 49. She's not a 50. So I'll give them that. But overall, I'm cautiously optimistic that she'll surprise me with some acting prowess.
Yeah, I see some friends in the chat are mentioning her appearance on Late Night with Seth Meyers, where she did day drinking. That is a really good thing to go check out if you want to see her personality a little bit. Obviously, she was in Barbie. She was Mermaid Barbie this last year.
She waved.
Was also a little bit. And she was in Argyle, which was a very heavily promoted movie that I don't think did very well, if I understand correctly. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, I don't think it did. Budget $200 million, box office 96.2. So yeah, didn't do so great. But clearly she's venturing into acting, so it'll be interesting to see how this part of her career goes. And I don't know what they're going to do for 50, but clearly for the rest of the season, they're looking to get some big names. Dua Lipa is a big name. So I cannot wait to see if we're going to continue the momentum of where the season has been building to. I think the last few weeks of the season have been fantastic. So I'm excited to see what continues here for season 49. We still have more coverage left of this Ryan Gosling and Chris Stapleton episode. First up with our By the Number show on a Wednesday night, where Mike Murray will be back to talk about the screen time. Will he do some sort of stats on breaking? Possibly, but I'm sure there'll be some fun stuff to talk about on Wednesday with Mike Murray on our By the Number show. So you got to join us at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll also have a show for our patrons over at Patreon. So if you want to check out that show, patreon.com/the SNL network, where you as a patron can vote for the sketch you want us to dive into even further and discuss some behind the scenes information on that sketch. So that will be out on Thursday for the patrons, and the poll will be up tomorrow for that. Next Monday, I'm still working out the schedule for the show. I'm trying to work on an SNL stories that will hopefully materialize for next week. It's also Passover, so I'm not exactly sure if it's going to air on Monday or not, but there will be a show sometime in the next week for you guys. And then in 2 Mondays from now, we will be back with our feedback show, where if you are a patron and you want to come podcast or talk about Saturday Night Live, you just got to sign up on Patreon. Join us on the show. Rich Tackenberg will be joining me for that show. So we'll go through all of the questions from the listeners and invite different patrons on. It's a very fun show that will happen in 2 weeks before we are then back for a full week of Dua Lipa coverage. Bill Kenney, thank you for joining us tonight. Anything you would like to check out or tell people to check out?
Yes. Well, thank you, John. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad to be here to be able to talk about the second great episode in a row. You can follow me at all the socials at BKLove73. And I also now have another Instagram and Twitter where I am tracking the history of SNL on this date. So you can find that at SNL_OTD. Started it about a week ago. So it's been a lot of fun digging through the dates and seeing what we can find about all this useless knowledge in my brain.
I did not know that was you, so I'll give you a follow. So there you go. I'm excited to check out that account. Kirstin, thank you for joining us as well. Anything you would like to tell the listeners about?
Absolutely. If you are in Toronto tomorrow night, we have our Generation Women show, an intergenerational storytelling event in the Toronto area. Check out generationwomen.ca. Bill, I will follow all of the BK Love 73, which sounds like your password, by the way. So watch out for that. Nope. Okay. And John, thank you for bringing Gary on this show. What an absolute treat. Like I am pinching myself. That is so fun and so exciting. So thank you. And Gary, thank you. Sorry you couldn't stay with us the whole episode, but I tell you I'm speechless. Thank you.
Yeah, truly a privilege getting to talk to Gary or any former SNL cast member.
Yeah.
Gary Kroeger was amazing on Saturday Night Live. Did not get his due, like in terms of, he was on in an era where, there was a lot of changes happening with the show. In my opinion, like if he had come on in a later era, he would have been there for a long, long time. And but to me is one of the better cast members to come out of those early days of the show. Definitely go on YouTube, check out his sketches, go watch the episodes from those times and see Gary grow on the show and some of the characters that he did. So I really got to enjoy watching him on the show. I love getting to talk to him. He has a great podcast himself where he gets to talk to his friend Kenny. So the Gary and Kenny show, if you want to go check that out, they get to interview a lot of fun guests. So I just want to give a plug for that show. Of course, for everything happening here, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X at the SNL Network to make sure to see all of our content. You can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify to never miss any of our shows that we have here. I want to thank our presenting partner, LateNighter.com, for helping us with this roundtable tonight. And thanks to Bill and Gary and Kirstin for joining us and everybody in the chat who joined us live on this Monday. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNN. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next time.